One woman woke up every morning in a tiny room with cracked walls and a leaking roof, working her fingers raw just to survive. She never imagined that one simple act of kindness would connect her life to a world she had only seen from a distance. But when fate placed a dying man in her path, everything changed. Would her choice save him or destroy her? Sit back, relax, and let's dive into this story. In the busy streets of Lagos, a young woman named Adana sat quietly behind an old sewing machine. The machine made a loud rattling sound every time she pressed the pedal, but it still worked, and that was all that mattered. Her small shop was located in a crowded market area where people walked past quickly without paying much attention to anything around them. The shop was not really a shop. It was just a wooden table under a faded blue canopy. The canopy had several holes, and when it rained, water dripped through and soaked the fabric she kept folded on the table. But Adana never complained. She simply moved the fabrics to a drier spot and continued working. Adana was a seamstress. She sewed clothes for people in the neighborhood. Most of her customers were poor like her, so they could not afford to pay much. But she still worked hard on every piece of clothing, stitching carefully and making sure everything looked neat. Every morning, Adana woke up before sunrise. She lived in a single room not far from the market. The room was very small. There was a narrow bed on one side, a small stove in the corner, and a wooden box where she kept her few belongings. The walls were cracked, and during the rainy season, water seeped through the roof and formed small puddles on the floor. But Adana did not focus on what she did not have. She focused on surviving. She had been alone for many years now. Her parents had died when she was still very young, and she had no siblings. A kind neighbor had helped her learn how to sew, and that skill had kept her alive ever since. One hot afternoon, Adana was sitting at her sewing table, working on a dress for a customer. The sun was blazing and sweat rolled down her face. She wiped her forehead with the back of her hand and continued stitching. Suddenly, she heard a loud noise. It sounded like something heavy had fallen nearby. Adana looked up quickly. A few people in the market had stopped walking and were looking toward the main road. Curious, Adana stood up and walked toward the noise. As she got closer, she saw a small crowd forming near the roadside. People were whispering and pointing at something on the ground. Adana pushed through the crowd gently. When she finally saw what everyone was looking at, her heart sank. A man was lying on the ground. He was not moving. His clothes were dirty and torn, and there was blood on his forehead. He looked like he had been in an accident. "Someone should call for help," a woman in the crowd said. "He looks like a beggar," another person replied. "Maybe he was hit by a motorcycle." "We should just leave him. The police will come and take him away," someone else added. Adana stood there staring at the man. No one was doing anything. Everyone was just watching. She felt something stir inside her chest. She could not just walk away. She stepped forward and knelt beside the man. His breathing was shallow and his eyes were closed. She gently touched his shoulder. "Sir," she said softly, "can you hear me?" The man did not respond. Adana looked around at the people watching. "Please, someone help me carry him," she said, but no one moved. They all just stared at her like she was doing something foolish. "Why are you wasting your time?" one man asked. "He is probably a madman." Adana ignored the comment. She looked at the injured man again. He needed help and no one else was willing to give it. She made a decision. She stood up and waved down a passing motorcycle taxi. The rider stopped and looked at her. "Please, I need your help," Adana said. "This man is hurt. I need to take him to the hospital." The rider looked at the man on the ground and frowned. "I do not carry sick people on my bike," he said. Adana reached into her pocket and pulled out the little money she had earned that day. "Please," she said, "I will pay you." The rider hesitated, then finally nodded. Together, they carefully lifted the man and placed him on the back of the motorcycle. Adana sat behind him, holding him steady so he would not fall. The ride to the hospital was slow and difficult. The man's body was heavy, and Adana had to use all her strength to keep him upright. When they finally arrived at the hospital, she quickly called for help. 2 nurses rushed out with a stretcher. They lifted the man carefully and took him inside. Adana followed them, her heart pounding. At the reception desk, a nurse looked at her. "Are you his family?" the nurse asked. "No," Adana replied. "I just found him on the road." The nurse frowned. "Then who is going to pay for his treatment?" Adana swallowed hard. She had not thought about that. She looked down at the small amount of money left in her hand. It was barely enough to cover anything. "I will pay," she said quietly. The nurse looked at her with doubt but said nothing. She took the money and walked away. Adana sat down on a bench in the waiting area. Her hands were shaking. She did not know why she had done what she did. She did not know the man. She did not have extra money to spend. But somehow leaving him on the road had felt wrong. Hours passed. Adana waited quietly. Finally, a doctor came out and walked toward her. "Are you the one who brought him in?" the doctor asked. Yes, Adana replied, standing up quickly. The doctor nodded. He is stable now. He had a head injury and was very dehydrated. If you had not brought him in when you did, he might not have survived. Adana felt relief wash over her. Thank you, doctor. The doctor studied her for a moment. You did a good thing, he said. Then he walked away. Adana sat back down. She stayed at the hospital for a little while longer, then quietly left. She did not expect anything in return. She had simply done what felt right. The next morning, Adana returned to her sewing table in the market. Life continued as it always had. She worked from morning until evening, stitching clothes and earning just enough to buy food and pay her rent. But 3 days later, something unexpected happened. A black car slowly drove into the market area and stopped near Adana's table. People turned to look. Cars like that rarely came to that part of the city. The back door opened and a man in a neat suit stepped out. He looked around carefully, then walked straight toward Adana. Adana looked up, surprised. Good afternoon, she said politely. The man nodded. Are you Adana? He asked. Yes, she replied, confused. How do you know my name? The man smiled slightly. I have been looking for you, he said. My name is Mr. Chukwu. I work for someone who wants to meet you. Adana frowned. Meet me, why? Mr. Chukwu gestured toward the car. Please come with me, everything will be explained. Adana hesitated. She did not know this man and she did not understand what was happening, but something in his calm voice made her feel that it was safe. Slowly, she stood up. Where are we going? She asked. To see the man you saved, Mr. Chukwu replied. Adana's eyes widened. The man from the hospital. Yes, Mr. Chukwu said. He has been asking for you. Adana followed him to the car. She climbed into the back seat and the car drove away from the market. As they moved through the city, Adana watched the streets change. The buildings became taller. The roads became smoother. They were heading toward a part of the city she had never been to before. Finally, the car stopped in front of a massive gate. The gate opened slowly and they drove into a large compound. Adana's mouth fell open. The house in front of her was the biggest she had ever seen. It looked like something from a movie. Mr. Chukwu opened the car door for her. Please follow me, he said. Adana stepped out slowly, looking around in amazement. The compound was beautiful. There were flowers everywhere, a fountain in the center, and tall trees lining the driveway. They walked into the house. Inside, everything was elegant. The floors were shiny, the furniture looked expensive, and the walls were decorated with beautiful paintings. Mr. Chukwu led her through a hallway and stopped in front of a large door. He knocked gently. Come in, a voice said from inside. Mr. Chukwu opened the door and stepped aside. Adana walked in slowly. The room was large and bright, and sitting on a chair near the window was the man she had found on the road, but he looked completely different now. He was clean, well-dressed, and his head was bandaged neatly. He looked up when she entered, and a smile appeared on his face. You, he said softly. Adana stood there, not knowing what to say. The man stood up slowly and walked toward her. Thank you, he said. You saved my life. Adana shook her head. I only did what anyone should have done, she replied. The man smiled. But no one else did, he said. Only you. There was a brief silence. Then the man extended his hand. My name is Mr. Okafor, he said, and I owe you everything. Adana shook his hand gently. She was still trying to understand what was happening. Mr. Okafor gestured toward a chair. Please sit down, he said. Adana sat down slowly. Mr. Okafor sat across from her. I want to know more about you, he said. Tell me about yourself. Adana hesitated. There is not much to tell, she said. I am just a seamstress. I work in the market. Mr. Okafor nodded. And you used your own money to take me to the hospital, he said. Adana looked down. It was not much, she said quietly. Mr. Okafor leaned forward. It was everything to me, he said. His voice was serious now. Do you know what happened to me that day? Adana shook her head. Mr. Okafor sighed. I was kidnapped, he said. I am a businessman. I own several companies. Some people wanted to collect ransom from my family, so they took me. Adana's eyes widened. But I managed to escape, Mr. Okafor continued. I ran for a long time. I was weak, injured, and confused. I did not know where I was. Then I collapsed on that road. He looked at Adana. If you had not helped me, I would have died there, he said. The people who kidnapped me were still looking for me. If they had found me again, I would not be here today. Adana felt a chill run through her body. She had no idea the situation had been that serious. You did not just save my life, Mr. Okafor said. You gave me a second chance. Adana did not know what to say. She simply nodded. Mr. Okafor stood up and walked to his desk. He picked up an envelope and brought it back to her. This is for you, he said, handing it to her. Adana took the envelope slowly. She opened it and looked inside. Her hands began to shake. Inside the envelope was more money than she had ever seen in her entire life. "I cannot take this," she said quickly, trying to hand it back. Mr. Okafor raised his hand. "Please," he said, "you deserve it." Adana shook her head. "I did not help you because I wanted money," she said. Mr. Okafor smiled. "I know," he said. "That is exactly why I want to give it to you." Adana looked at the money again. Tears filled her eyes. With this money, she could fix her room. She could buy a better sewing machine. She could eat proper meals. "Thank you," she whispered, but Mr. Okafor was not finished. "I also want to offer you something else," he said. Adana looked up. "I want to help you build a real business," Mr. Okafor said. "You are a seamstress. I will provide you with a proper shop, new equipment, and everything you need to grow." Adana could not believe what she was hearing. "Why would you do all this for me?" she asked. Mr. Okafor looked at her seriously. "Because kindness like yours is rare," he said, "and I believe in rewarding good people." Adana sat there in silence, overwhelmed by everything that was happening. Over the next few weeks, Mr. Okafor kept his promise. He rented a shop for Adana in a better part of the city. He bought her new sewing machines, fabrics, and everything she needed. He even hired someone to help her manage the business. Adana could not believe how much her life had changed. She now had a real shop with her name written on the sign outside. Customers began coming in, not just poor people from the market, but wealthier clients who appreciated quality work. Her business grew quickly. Word spread about her skill and dedication. Soon, she had more orders than she could handle. She hired more workers to help her, and the shop became busy every single day. But even as her life improved, Adana never forgot where she came from. She still woke up early every morning. She still worked hard. And she still treated every customer with respect, no matter how much money they had. One evening after closing the shop, Adana sat quietly in her new apartment. Mr. Okafor had also helped her find a better place to live. The apartment was small but comfortable. It had proper walls, a solid roof, and running water. As she sat there, she thought about everything that had happened. Just a few months ago, she had been struggling to survive. Now she had a successful business and a future filled with hope. But she also thought about the man she had saved. Mr. Okafor had changed her life completely, and all because she had chosen to help a stranger. A few days later, Mr. Okafor invited Adana to his house again. When she arrived, he was sitting in the same room where they had first spoken. "Adana," he said warmly, "please sit down." She sat down, wondering why he had called her. Mr. Okafor looked at her carefully. "I have been watching your progress," he said. "Your business is doing very well." Adana smiled. "Thank you, sir. It is all because of your help." Mr. Okafor shook his head. "No," he said. "It is because of your hard work and your character." He paused for a moment, then continued. "I have another proposal for you," he said. Adana listened carefully. "I want to expand your business even further," Mr. Okafor said. "I want to turn it into a fashion brand, something that can reach customers across the country." Adana's eyes widened. "A fashion brand?" she repeated. "Yes," Mr. Okafor said. "I have connections in the industry. I can help you get there, but only if you are willing to work for it." Adana felt her heart racing. This was an opportunity she had never dreamed of. "I am willing," she said firmly. Mr. Okafor smiled. "Good," he said. "Then we will begin immediately." Over the following months, Adana's life became even busier. Mr. Okafor introduced her to designers, suppliers, and business managers. He taught her how to run a larger operation. He showed her how to manage finances, market her products, and build a brand. It was not easy. There were many late nights and difficult decisions, but Adana never gave up. She remembered the days when she had nothing, and that memory kept her focused. Slowly, her small sewing shop transformed into something much bigger. She opened more locations. She hired more staff. Her designs began appearing in magazines and fashion shows. People who had once ignored her on the streets now recognized her name. Adana, the seamstress who had risen from poverty to success. But even with all her success, Adana remained humble. She never forgot the kindness that Mr. Okafor had shown her, and she never forgot the lesson she had learned that day on the road. One afternoon, while walking through the market where she used to work, Adana saw a young girl sitting behind a small table. The girl was sewing clothes by hand, struggling with an old needle and thread. Adana stopped and watched her for a moment. The girl reminded her of herself many years ago. She walked over to the girl. "Hello," Adana said gently. The girl looked up, surprised. "Good afternoon, Ma," she said politely. Adana smiled. "What is your name?" "Ngozi," the girl replied. "How long have you been sewing, Ngozi?" Adana asked. 2 years, Ma," Ngozi said. I am trying to save money to buy a sewing machine. Adana nodded slowly. She reached into her bag and pulled out a business card. Come to this address tomorrow, she said, handing the card to Ngozi. Ngozi looked at the card, confused. Why, Ma? Adana smiled. Because I want to help you, she said. The next day, Ngozi arrived at Adana's main shop. Her eyes widened when she saw the large building with Adana's name on it. Adana welcomed her inside and showed her around. Then she sat Ngozi down and made her an offer. I will train you, Adana said. I will teach you everything I know about sewing and running a business, and when you are ready, I will help you start your own shop. Ngozi's eyes filled with tears. Why would you do this for me? She asked. Adana smiled. Because someone once did it for me, she said. Over the next few years, Adana helped many young women like Ngozi. She provided training, equipment, and support. She gave them the same opportunity that Mr. Okafor had given her. Her business continued to grow, but her mission became bigger than just making money. She wanted to lift others up the way she had been lifted. One evening, Mr. Okafor visited Adana at her main office. He looked around at everything she had built and smiled with pride. You have done well, he said. Adana smiled. I could not have done any of this without you, she said. Mr. Okafor shook his head. You had the strength inside you all along, he said. I just gave you the opportunity to show it. They sat together quietly for a moment. Then Mr. Okafor spoke again. Do you remember the day you found me on the road? He asked. Yes, Adana replied. I will never forget it. Mr. Okafor looked at her. I have thought about that day many times, he said, and I realized something important. Adana listened. You did not save me because you knew who I was, Mr. Okafor said. You saved me because you saw a human being in need. That is rare. He paused. Most people only help others when they think they will gain something in return. But you helped me when you had nothing to gain. You even used your own money you needed for yourself. Adana looked down. I just did what felt right, she said. And that, Mr. Okafor said, is exactly why you deserve everything you have now. Few months later, Adana's fashion brand was featured in a national magazine. The article told her story, from the poor seamstress in the market to the successful businesswoman she had become. People across the country read her story and were inspired. Many of them reached out to her, asking for advice and support. Adana responded to as many as she could. She shared her experiences, offered guidance, and encouraged others to never give up on their dreams. One day, a journalist came to interview her. The journalist asked her many questions about her success, her business, and her future plans. But then the journalist asked one final question. What is the most important lesson you have learned? Adana thought for a moment, then she answered. I learned that kindness is never wasted, she said. When you help someone without expecting anything in return, you plant a seed, and sometimes that seed grows into something beautiful. The journalist smiled and wrote down her words. That evening, Adana sat alone in her office. She looked out the window at the city lights. She thought about her journey, from the tiny room with the leaking roof to the successful business she now owned. She thought about the man she had saved, the man who had changed her life forever. And she thought about all the young women she was now helping, giving them the same chance she had been given. Adana smiled to herself. Her life had not been easy, but every struggle had been worth it, because in the end, one simple act of kindness had changed everything. Years passed, and Adana's influence continued to grow. She opened training centers in different cities, providing free education to young women who wanted to learn sewing and fashion design. She partnered with other businesses to create job opportunities. She spoke at events, sharing her story and inspiring others to pursue their dreams. But no matter how successful she became, Adana never forgot her roots. She still visited the market where she used to work. She still spoke to the people there, encouraging them and offering help where she could. One afternoon, while visiting the market, an old woman approached her. The woman looked familiar, but Adana could not immediately remember where she had seen her before. Adana, the woman said softly. Adana looked at her carefully, then it came back to her. This was the woman who had stood in the crowd that day, the day she had found Mr. Okafor on the road. I remember you, the woman said. You were the one who helped that man when no one else would. Adana nodded. Yes, she said. The woman smiled. I want to thank you, she said. Adana looked confused. Thank me for what? The woman's eyes filled with tears. Because you showed me something that day, she said. You showed me that one person can make a difference. After I saw what you did, I started helping others too, and my life has been better because of it. Adana felt warmth spread through her chest. She had never expected that her actions would inspire others in that way. Thank you for telling me, Adana said gently. The woman nodded and walked away. Adana stood there for a moment, reflecting on the encounter. That evening, Adana returned to her office. She sat at her desk and opened her journal. She had started writing down her thoughts and experiences years ago, hoping that one day her story might encourage others. She wrote about the old woman she had met. She wrote about the power of kindness and how one small action could create a ripple effect that touched many lives. As she wrote, she felt grateful. Grateful for the struggles that had made her strong, grateful for the people who had helped her along the way, and grateful for the opportunity to help others. A few weeks later, Mr. Ackhaffer called Adana and invited her to a special event. When she arrived, she was surprised to see a large hall filled with people. Mr. Ackhaffer stood on a stage and welcomed everyone. Then he called Adana to join him. Adana walked up to the stage, confused. Mr. Ackhaffer smiled at her. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, addressing the crowd, "this woman saved my life, and because of her kindness I am here today." The crowd clapped. "But she did not just save my life," Mr. Ackhaffer continued. "She inspired me to do more, to give more, to help more people." He turned to Adana. "That is why I am announcing the creation of the Adana Foundation," he said. "A foundation dedicated to helping young women build businesses and achieve their dreams." Adana's eyes widened. She had not expected this. "And I want you to lead it," Mr. Ackhaffer said. The crowd erupted in applause. Adana stood there, overwhelmed with emotion. She looked at Mr. Ackhaffer. "Thank you," she whispered. Mr. Ackhaffer smiled. "No," he said, "thank you." The foundation launched a few months later. It provided funding, training, and mentorship to young women across the country. Adana worked tirelessly to ensure that every woman who came to the foundation received the support she needed. She traveled to different cities, meeting with young entrepreneurs and sharing her story. She encouraged them to believe in themselves, to work hard, and to never give up. And everywhere she went, people were inspired. Years later, Adana stood in front of a mirror, getting ready for another event. She was now a well-known figure in the country, respected for her business success and her charitable work. But as she looked at her reflection, she did not see a wealthy businesswoman. She saw the same girl who had once sat behind a sewing machine in the market, struggling to survive. That girl was still inside her, and she always would be. Because no matter how much her life had changed, Adana never forgot where she came from. She never forgot the kindness that had lifted her up. And she never stopped helping others the way she had been helped. That evening at the event, Adana was asked to give a speech. She stood in front of hundreds of people and spoke from her heart. "Many years ago," she began, "I was a poor seamstress with nothing but a dream and a willingness to work hard. I lived in a tiny room, struggled to pay my rent, and wondered if life would ever get better." She paused, "But one day I made a choice. I chose to help a stranger even though I had very little to give, and that choice changed my life forever." The room was silent. "I am not here to tell you that kindness will always bring you wealth," Adana continued. "But I am here to tell you that kindness will always bring you something far more valuable: peace, purpose, and the knowledge that you made a difference." She looked around the room. "So I encourage you, no matter where you are in life, no matter how little you think you have, always choose kindness, because you never know how one small act can change everything." The crowd stood and applauded. Adana smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. After the event, she returned home. She sat quietly in her living room, reflecting on her journey, from rags to riches, from poverty to success, from a struggling seamstress to a respected businesswoman and philanthropist. But more than anything, Adana was grateful, grateful for the challenges that had shaped her, grateful for the people who had believed in her, and grateful for the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of others. As she sat there, her phone rang. It was Mr. Ackhaffer. "Hello, sir," Adana said. "Adana," Mr. Ackhaffer said warmly, "I just wanted to call and tell you how proud I am of you." Adana smiled. "Thank you, sir. I owe everything to you." "No," Mr. Ackhaffer said gently. "You owe it to yourself. I simply gave you an opportunity. You did the rest." They talked for a few more minutes, then said goodbye. Adana put down the phone and looked out the window. The city lights twinkled in the distance. She thought about the young women she was helping. She thought about the lives that were being changed because of the foundation. And she thought about the future, knowing that there was still so much more to do. But for now, she was content. Content with the knowledge that her life had purpose, that her struggles had meaning, and that her kindness had created something beautiful. My wonderful viewers, this story reminds us that no act of kindness is ever too small. What do you think about Adana's journey? Do you believe that helping others can truly change your life? Share your thoughts in the comments section. I would really love to read from you. A more interesting story will be coming in a few days. So make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you do not miss it. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and share it with your friends. Thank you so much for watching.